Hi there, I'm Rex King. Welcome back to another episode of From the Archive. Billy Wilder was one of the best known directors to come out of the Golden Age. By 1960, he already had several hits under his belt, including a Best Picture winner in The Lost Weekend. But in 1960, he would release what many would go on to consider one of his best films, The Apartment. The Apartment is partially inspired by a scene in a movie called The Brief Encounter, where these two lovers who are having an extramarital affair meet up in a friend's apartment. Wilder was really curious what that friend must be like to have these two do that sort of deed in his apartment. It's also partially inspired by the real life scandal of Jennings Lang, a famous agent who got shot for having an extramarital affair with a woman using a subordinate's apartment. For casting, Wilder knew he wanted Jack Lemmon for the role of C.C. Baxter. He just finished Some Like It Hot with him and felt he was perfect for the role. For the role of Sheldrick, he initially wanted Paul Douglas, but unfortunately Douglas passed away before production could begin on the film, so he turned to Fred MacMurray. The film was released in 1960, and it did really well at the box office, apparently making double its budget, though I couldn't find exact numbers. With critics, however, it was split down the middle, probably to do with the subject matter because, well, extramarital affairs weren't commonplace in movies even in the 1960s, so it was really weird for them to see a film kind of normalize that type of activity. So critics were a little torn about that, but they warmed up to it inevitably because the film won several Oscars at the Academy Awards, including Best Picture. And the film is now considered to be one of Billy Wilder's best works. So what do I think about it? Well, let's talk about the story. The film follows C.C. Baxter, played by Jack Lemmon. He's your standard insurance guy. He works a 9 to 5. He has feelings for the elevator girl, Miss Kubelik, played by Shirley MacLaine. And he works really hard and comes back to his small apartment. Like I said, he's your standard insurance guy, with one small exception. You see, he has a secret. That secret? He loans out his apartment key to the executives at his company so they can have affairs in his apartment. And he does this to move up the job ladder. However, when he starts lending out his apartment to Mr. Sheldrick, played by Fred MacMurray, to have an affair, he doesn't realize that Sheldrick is going to have that affair with Miss Kubelik, the girl that he has feelings for. And when he finds out, he now has to decide between his feelings for Miss Kubelik or his career. So this story is really well done and well composed. It's a mixture of comedy and drama. Now this could be hard, as if you go too far the drama route, the comedy falls flat. If you go too far the comedy route, it feels like you're making light of a dramatic situation. But this film manages to walk the line very well and is perfectly balanced between comedy and drama. When it's trying to be funny, I get enough chuckles that I feel like it's doing a good job, and the dramatic moments do hit hard enough. However, I do feel like this film's a little too simple, as I did feel like I could predict everything that was going to happen within the first few minutes of the setup. I kind of understood where the film was going to go, and I knew the inevitable outcomes. However, the ending was not something I was expecting, as I was expecting this movie to just end with them falling in each other's arms, C.C. Baxter and Miss Kubelik, but luckily it ends with a nice little zinger instead, with her just telling him to shut up and deal the cards for their gin rummy game. I really like that ending, and I think it drives the point home that this film didn't need to end in happily ever after. It ends with, well, the end. That's it. There's not much more to tell. They might become a couple later, but right now, this is just what they are, and I really like that. Now, This is also one of the first films to really have a suicide on screen. Most films that had suicide either alluded to it or had it happen off screen. This one has a suicide attempt on screen, and that is one of the first films to do it. And it's quite gripping, and that's when you know the film's going to take a different tone, as at that point it had taken a mainly comedic tone. And when that happens, you know it's going to take a dramatic tone. But luckily, it still has some decent comedy bits to lighten up the mood at times, so it doesn't get too melodramatic. The characters in this film are really well developed and feel three-dimensional. Sheldrick is the right type of antagonist for this film, as he feels like a jerk every scene he's in. He just feels like an absolute monster of a person, and comes off as unfeeling and uncaring. Uh, Miss Kubelik could have been a one-note character, but luckily she is developed, so we feel for her in the situation that she's in. And she's also one of the funnier characters in the movie, so it does work in the comedy as well. But the most developed character is definitely our main character, C.C. Baxter, as he could have also been very much one note and starts off kind of like that, a wimp, not really wanting to stand up to his bosses and just giving them what they want so he can move up the corporate ladder. But luckily, as we get to know him and understand him, we get to really feel for the character and root for him and towards the end of the film. I really enjoyed that. I really got to like this character and really enjoyed rooting for him by the end of the movie. Then you have the performances, and I gotta say, the performances are in this film are some of the best. Fred MacMurray is great as Sheldrick, and he just delivers his lines with the type of inhuman attitude I expect from this type of character. I really liked how inhuman he felt to me and how much of a jerk he felt. Mind you, you can tell why women fall for this guy, is when he turns on the charm, he can be quite charming. Then you have Shirley MacLaine, and she had the toughest job with a character who could have been one note, like I said earlier, but manages to give her depth in her performance, as her facial expressions give us the feeling of drama that we need, while she also manages to have great comedic wit and timing. But let's face the facts. Jack Lemmon is the star of this show. He was brilliant in this movie, and he plays C.C. Baxter spectacular. His comedic timing could not be better. And as far as the dramatic performance goes, he knows when to turn it on when he needs to. I really enjoyed him in this film. Now, the visuals in this film aren't a ton to talk about, you would think anyway, but there is some cool things with some forced perspective with the office shots, to make it look like it's a bigger office than it actually is. If you look into it, there's apparently they used smaller desks, smaller people. By the end of the office, there was just kids in small play desks, and then a painted background to make it look like the office went on forever. And then you had the apartment itself, which is a brilliant set, and we spent most of our time there. So the set design is quite intricate, and I really enjoyed that. The costume work is also really well done. The musical score is forgettable. The opening and the ending are all really well done. It's just everything in between is a big fat nothing. All of it's stuff I've heard before, and, well, stuff I would hear again. But to answer the question, is this film one of Wilder's best? It's not The Lost Weekend. I'm sorry, I like The Lost Weekend a lot more than this. I might review that movie at some other point, but The Apartment, it's good. It really is good. It's not that film. It's a film I would watch in an afternoon and move on. I probably wouldn't watch it again. But I do enjoy a lot of the comedy bits, and I got a few chuckles. I just wish there was more here. I wish they drove the point home that they were trying to drive, with it being kind of like a symbolism of office culture. I wish they had focused on that a little bit more instead of the romance, because I feel like that's where the meat of the story truly is. But this film is still fine. I really enjoyed myself, and that's all that matters. So, is this film a buy, stream, or a avoid altogether? Well, it's good enough that I don't think it's an avoid altogether. As for is it a buy? Well, it comes with two commentaries and two featurettes. The commentaries are both done by film historians, so I gave those a pass because I don't care for those ones. But the featurettes, well, there's a making of the apartment, which talks about all Wilder did to make this film, and a featurette on Jack Lemmon and what he did as a performer. I really enjoyed these featurettes, and if you like this movie, I definitely would say give it a buy. But as a film on its own, it's just not worth the buy. I honestly think that this film is a stream. It's a good for a one-time watch. If you like it after that one-time watch and you want to buy it, definitely track down this Blu-ray. It's the Kino Lorber Blu-ray that I own, and I really think that there are some cool featurettes here. Anyway, that's what I thought about The Apartment. What'd you think about it if you've seen it? Let me know in the comments below. And next week, I'll be taking a look at Key Largo. See you then.